the first thing to say is that I think this is maybe one of the great uh, advantages or promises of a Christian study center as an institution of Christian education vis-a-vis, say, a Christian college, is that students are immersed in the university setting day to day, and so they're having to do that engagement with people that disagree with them in all of their classes and all of life. So really, what we're doing is spending a couple of hours in intentional Christian formation, in addition to the vast majority of their time, which is spent in a pluralistic setting. So they're learning to navigate the pluralistic reality that we live in a way that if you pull them out for 4 years and put them into more of a situation in which they're with people that agree with them, then sometimes they're sort of launched out into the reality of pluralism and haven't learned to navigate that. So I think some of it is just living within the university context. The other thing I would say is that sort of pluralistic engagement is very much a part of the Anselm House mission. So sometimes I think about our mission with sort of two tracks or two prongs. The first one is Christian formation, so working with Christians that are in the university, working with faculty, working with students to draw these connections between their faith and what they're doing. But then there's a second piece of our mission, which I think of the engagement of the Christian faith with the work of the institution of the university. And so this is coming together with people of all faiths, no faiths, to say, what are the big questions that we need to be addressing, and how, for us as Christians, how do the intellectual resources of the Christian faith, what do they contribute to that conversation? So how can we work together with others in the university to address some of these enduring and big questions? And so I'd say that one of the major ways this happens, again, the Fellows program is much more on that Christian formation side, but a lot of our events and things are, co-sponsored with academic departments. We'll feature, faculty from the university that are not Christians. And so a lot of what we're doing is modeling what that would look like for students in the university. So I can think of one event that we did, which was excellent, where we had a couple of faculty from biomedical engineering, one that's a Christian, one that is agnostic, just come and talk with students about what their friendship has looked like in the university context. So, they've gotten to know each other in the context of a secular university. They didn't have a lot of opportunities to talk about faith together, but once they sort of realized that they were both interested in big questions, they developed an intellectual friendship that allowed them to talk about these things. And so they just talked with students about, what does that look like? How have you engaged well as people that disagree on fundamental questions, but as colleagues within a secular institution? How have you made space for that? And so I think just seeing examples of that through the community of Anselm House is probably the most important piece of that for students. The Common Good Year really talks a lot about that challenge of pluralism, because it's just a totally different context than, say, medieval Christianity in terms of how Christians live out their faith today. So we're sort of thinking very explicitly about, what does faithfulness mean in a pluralistic environment, and in an environment where, Christians are the minority culture. So in some ways, returning to what Christianity was when it first emerged.
Wow, that's really interesting. So on the note, first of all, you said, I think, an important word. You tried to host events at Anselm House. So you described for us a piece of Anselm House, which is this kind of cornerstone 3-year curriculum.
Yeah.
But there are other activities, and it seems like you said you model. So you invite members of the faculty to have conversations with students where they talk about how do they think about their faith in pluralistic context. And maybe some of them aren't necessarily people of Christian faith or evangelical faith, but people to speak to this general question about how they operate in a pluralistic context. Did I get that right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I observed when I was at Yale. I believe Rivendell Institute is a member of the Christian Studies Center. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And they host a lot of, they host Bible studies, and they host very, events for people who are very committed to the Christian faith, but they also host open dialogues with people of different faiths. And they are part of a group of organizations that host faculty roundtables, and they will intentionally have a person of faith and a person of no particular faith or of a different faith dialoguing on the same question. Because I think what you said right now about modeling what this kind of pluralistic dialogue looks like from professors, I think students really like to see that and to hear that, because it's one thing to cover it in the curriculum, which it sounds like you do, but it's another thing to kind of to see it, because we learn by engaging in things as well as by reflecting on it.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, there's no shortage of kind of Christian reflection on what it means to be a faithful Christian when you're a minority in your environment. So I think that that's really important, because the goal doesn't seem to be to form people only to survive within a particular kind of community where people all share their background and their beliefs, because that's simply not the environment most of them are going to go into. And maybe that's not even what Christ is calling us to do. So to avoid some of the closedness that can happen with